So Andrew was saying, they were talking about Behemoth, and Leviathan, and Andrew said, "Oh, is Leviathan the same as the Kraken?" And indeed, in popular culture, the two have very often been confused. But look, I need to share my screen. Look, this is Leviathan. Okay, so this is Leviathan. This is, if you missed last week, this is what I was talking about last week. So Leviathan, a big old fishy type monster that is large enough to encircle an island. That's not a very good view of the island there. Let me just see if I can find the one where he's actually encircling the island. Choose a different asset. Oh no, I can't find it. Anyway, never mind. Anyway, so he's around an island. On the other hand, what are we talking about today? Kraken. Oh God, this is great, isn't it? Blimmin', everything's changed again on Instagram. Kraken isn't around an island. Look, the Kraken is an island. So two different things. Leviathan, big enough to encircle an island. Kraken, big enough to look like an island. This is an illustration actually from a website called, what's it called? Wasted Time or Wasted Artists or something. I'll put it in the notes. The strapline is corporate artists wasting their time by day and unleashing their artistic superpowers by night. I love that. So this is some guy that has drawn the Kraken, or his imagining of the Kraken, and it's on this blog spot. Quite wonderful. So I know it's about 10 years old. So as you can see, this Kraken is forming what looks to be an island, and there's a little boat kind of heading towards the island. And I think that the artist has possibly got his inspiration from a legend about a bishop. So this is like way back when, this is like the year 1000, and it was a bishop who was in this boat, and he was traveling from Norway possibly to Greenland, and he sees this island and he thinks, well, this is an island that probably needs a little bit of religion. So he goes onto the island, steps onto the island, and he says a mass on the island and gets back in his boat, and they start to sail away. And and he's thinking, I've done a really great job there, great job. Let me just take one last look at the island that I've converted to Christianity. No one there, slightly odd, but never mind, I've done my bit. And he turns around from this boat, and the island has gone. No island at all. Well, you can guess what the actual island was, can't you? So yes, the island was in fact the Kraken, so coined. So the name was actually coined some 1,000 years later. No, that's a complete lie. Some 180 years later. My maths are really good as well. In 1180, King Sverre of Norway named this legendary creature that possibly the bishop stood on but didn't know that he was standing on it, and he named it the Kraken. So Kraken actually has absolutely nothing to do with Greek mythology, and I thought as well, I was thinking, is it the creature that went to, was kind of confined to live in the Earth's core? And I think I was thinking of Kronos, but I in the back of my mind there's another creature, and I couldn't see who it was, or couldn't find who it was. Anyway, if I do find that, I'll let you know. So the Kraken is a a Norse myth, something from Norse mythology, Norse folklore, rather than Greek mythology, despite what Clash of the Titans would have you believe, which is a little bit disappointing, isn't it? So yeah, maybe they said in Norwegian, release the Kraken. I don't know how you'd say that. Jeg snakker lite norsk, but I don't know how to say release the Kraken in Norwegian. It's a shame. So from the Norse tradition, but what did the Kraken look like? Well, there were lots and lots of descriptions of the Kraken, and as you can imagine, they all described this creature as being absolutely huge. Well, formed an island, for goodness sake. Eyes as big as saucers, which actually wouldn't be big enough. Anyway, huge eyes, tentacles, miles long. Interesting that so there's no mention of teeth. There's mention of something else which I'll come on to in a minute quite frequently, which is quite detrimental to the poor fish, and possibly marine life in general. But yeah, a lot of talk, however, about what the Kraken might eat. So let's just go on to the next image, which is this. So there we go, the Kraken. Interesting, that depiction of the Kraken, isn't it? There'll be more quite like that. I mean, is this a Kraken or is this a giant squid or a giant octopus? Discuss. So this is from 1650. Don't know who the artist is, but obviously this creature is really having a go at this little boat. So that bishop was incredibly lucky, wasn't he? He really did have a lucky escape. So what does the Kraken eat? Well, obviously, I was going to say obviously he's not chomping through big bones if he hasn't got big teeth, but the more gruesome of the descriptions of the Kraken say that he liked to come up very suddenly from the deep and engulf boats, whole boats, in his huge tentacles, and then drag the boats down to the bottom of the sea, where he would devour, I'm saying he or she, where it would devour, they maybe, would devour all of the sailors on board the boat. So not great if you believed that myth. Other myths say that the alternative kind of modus operandi for the Kraken would be to swim around the boat and around and around and around and around and around, creating this sort of maelstrom, and then the boat would sink, sort of go into this whirlpool and sink, and the Kraken was able to devour its prey in that way. Little bit reminiscent, I have to say, that one of Charybdis. Remember Charybdis when you were, from the Odyssey? So Odysseus had the choice as to go whether to go near Charybdis, the sort of whirlpool, destined or fated in life by Zeus to constantly swallow seawater, and Scylla. You remember Scylla with all the heads that were dogs and all these really long necks, and she would eat people anyway. So they do kind of cross over. It's quite interesting. So devouring sailors. Some perhaps less gory stories about the Kraken say no, they're probably not so interested in eating sailors. They're interested more in devouring fish, so poor fish. The thing is, it's like poor fish every which way where the Kraken was concerned, because so if they were interested in fish, then the fish apparently were so terrified that they would then swim really, really near to the surface to try and, basically they were trying to escape out of the water as near as they could to the surface, not so bright fish. Well, in that way, they couldn't think through things. I'm like defending the intelligence of fish now. So they would swim like really near to the surface, which meant that not only could they potentially be eaten by the Kraken still, because the Kraken was like, yeah, I don't care where you swim, I can get your fish, but also if they swam near the surface, they were easy for fishermen to just sort of pick off in their nets, weren't they? So double whammy, it gets even worse for the fish. So that's, by the way, is why lots of sailors actually kind of dared to go near the Kraken, because where there was a Kraken, there were lots of fish swimming near the surface. But also where there were Kraken, there were lots of fish, full stop, which sounds a bit weird, but this is the kicker for the poor fish. Terrifying when they actually got to the Kraken. Oh my God, it's the Kraken. Let's go to the surface. But they had been previously kind of lured into the Kraken's vicinity because the Kraken would eat fish, and then once those fish were digested, he would poo the waste out. But according to legend, this poo was absolutely irresistible to fish. So they would go, oh, what's that delicious scent, or whatever it is they were attracted to. Let's go and find out. And then they would find themselves once again near the Kraken, and so the cycle will repeat. I mean, what an absolute nightmare for them. Nightmare. It's just wrong, isn't it? So anyway, so that's the poor old fish. Might be fanciful, but the truth is that after this term Kraken was coined by King Sverre in 1180, the Kraken was written about, and it was written about in scientific journals. It appears in a journal in 1250, which went into great detail about the unusual feeding habits of the Kraken. A slightly different take this time. It wasn't going for the whole swallowing sailors, shenanigans. That wasn't on the agenda for this scientific journal, because it was a scientific journal. But it did say that the Kraken would eat fish and then regurgitate, and whatever it regurgitated sort of came back out of its mouth, and that was the I suppose probably food, isn't it, really? Kind of rotten food, partly digested food that the fish were so interested in, and so they would swarm around, and so similar sort of story. Then in fact, so then through the years, the Kraken was mentioned, and it was also included in Carl Linnaeus's. So Carl Linnaeus, really famous zoologist, botanist. So we're up to the 18th century now. So Linnaeus would he included this the Kraken in his first publication, which was 1735, I want to say, off the top of my head. Off the top of my head, I have read this earlier, but and was and categorized it as one of the known animals on the earth and in the sea. It was then spoken about again. So actually, in subsequent editions, he didn't include it, which was a shame, actually, because I like to think of the Kraken as a real thing. But he did say in a different publication that it was a strange monster that lived in the waters surrounding Norway, but that he had never seen this creature. So he wasn't saying it wasn't true, he was just saying that he'd never seen it. Then it was included again, and I realise I'm just kind of giving you a history of the Kraken rather than really looking at images, but I think it's quite interesting. So then it was mentioned again, the Bishop of Pontoppidan He was a bishop and also a historian, and he reckons that he had some experiences with the Kraken, and he reckoned that he smelt whatever the Kraken regurgitated or emitted, and that it had a peculiar and strong scent. So he's adding to that. He didn't go too overboard though, unlike this guy, and this is an image from, once again, the 18th century, quite similar to the last one. So it's amazing how over the years they're all quite much of a muchness. So this was included in a publication that was written by a gentleman called Pierre Denis de Montfort. So this is late 18th century. And de Montfort, he was I was going to say a naturist. I don't know whether he was a naturist. He was a naturalist. And a historian, and he wrote quite a respected publication, but then he just went a little bit too far, and he started to claim that there were 10 boats, British boats, like big ships, that were brought down in 1782. Well, they disappeared. Not brought down, they disappeared in 1782. And he'd been writing about essentially about the Kraken, but by now he's calling it a giant octopus, which is probably exactly what it was. Either I think it was a real thing because it's been talked about so much over the centuries. So probably either a giant squid or a giant octopus. That kind of all matches up, doesn't it? With the emissions, so squid ink, the tentacles, the fact that sort of teeth aren't really mentioned. And if you've got a monster, teeth are nearly always mentioned. Think of Leviathan. Leviathan had rows of horrible teeth. So I think he kind of identified that properly, but then he just had to go a bit too far. It turns out he was a bit of a sensationalist, and he claimed that these 10 boats that had gone missing in 1782 were missing because they were all devoured by giant octopuses. Octopuses. Unfortunately for him, he might have got away with it, and it might have been a great story, but unfortunately for him, the British actually knew what had happened to those boats, and they knew that they hadn't been devoured by giant octopuses, and so he was completely discredited, and his career went down the pan, and his life went down the pan, really. He died not so long after in Paris as a pauper, and he could have had such a happy, rich career. Shame for him. So that is him. But finally, so this guy, so this is an illustration that was included in the first edition in 1870 of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So Jules Verne, his career definitely didn't go down the pan. Yeah, still sort of going strong, this myth. And as you can see, so here it kind of looks more like a giant squid. So that's the Kraken, almost certainly based on some kind of real life mammoth squid or octopus from the Nordic tradition, rather than not mentioned in Greek mythology. It's all just been, I guess it's just too good a story, especially, the fact that fish are attracted to its poo and it creates maelstroms, and, and it's huge, and it's got tentacles, and people could be sitting on its back, not realizing, thinking that they're sunning themselves on an island, and actually they're on the back of a big sea monster. I mean, it's all too delicious to ignore and not to use in as many stories as you possibly can. So I challenge you all today, go out and tell a story about the Kraken. And if you don't know one, make it up, because that's what a lot of people did. So there we go, the Kraken. So this one's from Jules Verne, the original edition from 1870. There we go. I shall stop sharing and turn comments back on. And I hope, Andrew, that we're all clear now about the Kraken and Leviathan and how you say behemoth. Behemoth. Who knows? Excellent Kraken work. Thank you. But I am going to go and watch, what's it called? Clash of the Titans. I think I have to do that. And also, is it Kraken or Kraken? Kraken. Kraken. I'm going to say Kraken. Love the Clash of the Titans. Yeah, I know. And then they made it again, didn't they? Not so long ago. And it was because I did see this bit on YouTube, and Liam Neeson was like, release the Kraken. And then, yeah, I don't know what happened. I think I saw the Kraken being released, or the Kraken being released. Anyway, yes, very cool rather. Love the Kraken. And not a Leviathan. Different monsters. There's room for more monsters. Always room for a monster. On that note, have a great day, everybody. I will post this at some point if you missed it or if you missed part of it. As ever, I will also put it on the Elevenses blog and have a little think about what I'm going to do next week. Next week, I might be ready to launch this project that I've been talking about for absolutely ages. So it is, if any of you are thinking, she did mention that she was doing something else and that's gone very quiet. Yes, it has gone quiet, but that's because we've been working away in the background. Everything takes about 5 times, 10 times longer than you think it's going to. But it's coming. And I hope you'll enjoy it. So anyway, have a great Thursday, have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining. Bye.